So with the ragging technique, you are applying a paint wash, but with the rag, this is where you're going to make continuous textures. If your paint feels really thick, just add some extra water just with your spray bottle and keep dabbing with your rag. It's honestly, just have some fun with it. If your paint does start to feel a little bit thick, it's because your paint wash, what happens is you've added paint to water ratio and the paint is actually starting to settle below the water. So just try to remember to stir your paint wash as frequently as you can. If you've already laid it onto your project, again, just add some water and keep ragging, and most of all, keep having some fun. An important step with the ragging is to keep moving your rag around. With it being crunched and positioned and constantly moving, this is what's really creating some fantastic textures. You will notice that it'll start to get a little bit saturated with paint, and then you're going to know it's time to swap over and get a clean rag. If you're happy with your first coat of the ragging technique, great. But if for any reason, for the colors that you've chosen and you're not feeling like the texture showing up quite enough, always remember you can add a second or a third coat of the ragging technique. So for each coat you're applying the ragging technique, it is important to let the coat dry. Do take into account your room temperatures, how hot or how cold they are. That will have some variance to how long it's going to need to dry. Coming down. So it's important that your brush is moist but not overly saturated. Just use the side of your paint wash pan or dish that you're using to try to remove some of the excess water. You want it super moist, but not super saturated. So when I'm going to do the frottage technique, when I'm placing the paint down with my paintbrush, I try to do a lot of cross hatching so I don't have those perfect vertical lines going. When you put the paper down and then bring it back up with the cross hatching, has a more natural effect versus just having straight lines with the brush stroke. So to avoid the straight symmetrical line between each frottage sheet that you've laid down, I try to do a little extra cross hatching, and I try to actually overlap each frottage section I've done. So again, I'm just trying to avoid these straight lines as I am doing the sections. Again, just giving that more natural effect. You don't have to use a specific type of paper. You can use regular old newspaper, packing paper. Some people I've seen in some artistry books too have even used tissue paper. So don't be shy with whatever you have at home. If you ever come across an area, once you've placed the paper down as you're doing the frottage technique, you've brought the paper back up. If you feel there's an area that didn't absorb into the paper and the paint still feels a little bit thick, not to worry, just crumple your paper and just blop it, very similar to the ragging technique. So layering your techniques can really give some amazing definition and dimensions to your project pieces. You can always put a stencil down and do these techniques on top of that. Your stencil will definitely still show through. I mean, sky's the limits. Have fun with your projects. If you're doing this for the first time, don't be nervous. This is a super forgiving technique, both ragging and frottage. You can always just do the side with the colors you've chosen and see how you like it. You don't have to go and plan to do the whole piece right up front. Just do one small section. See how you like it first. Or even try a plain sample of an old wood boards you have somewhere. So I've never done this before. I just went out on a limb and thought to myself, hey, this is just straight paint pigment. Why can't I just rub it into an already current project and let's see how it turns out? And I was really, really happy with the result. And sky's the limits when it comes to all the colors you can do this particular technique with.